It says going live, and we're live. Life, how you doing,
Live
buddy?
Life.
Life is live. Live is life. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. So, so you know who I am. Most of you probably know who this is. I think that is Leif from Hologate. Say hi.
Hello.
Leif is joining us from their new office in Berlin, Germany.
No, Munich.
Oh, Munich. That's right. I was just in Berlin. That's up north, right? Sorry. And I am coming to you live this morning from Sydney, Australia. Just got in last night, and I want to thank everybody for all the amazing messages that you're sending me through back channels, which actually helped me get up at 4:30 this morning after getting a 10:30 last night to do this, because it seems like everybody's really enjoying it. And so for those of you that are new, there is a chat window all the way over there. And the chat is live, and you guys can chat with each other, because this is as much about building community as it is about my narcissistic desire to hear myself talk for an hour every week. And so, so we're gonna jump right in. So Leif and I, as a little bit of background, we met through a guy named Chris Crescatelli in Las Vegas, who runs the VR Fest at CES, amongst other things. And we did some work together for a few months, right, between the time we met and the time you launched at IAPA and AEG, I think, in London. And you guys have gone on. Give us a little bit of the history, man. Give us the story, like the birth story. I think people are really interested in hearing that, or at least I'm interested. So I don't give a fuck what anybody else wants.
So I had a company before, and we worked in computer graphics and visual effects for a lot of clients, like feature films and high-end commercials and these sort of things. And I worked in this business for about 20 years. And so the company here in Munich was probably gone 8 or 9 years or something. And so that is really where it came from. And so I started working in computer graphics in the 90s. And so that is mainly to the reason that I played virtuality in 1993. And that impressed me so much that I wanted to work in this field. And it was non-existent, so you couldn't work in this industry because it wasn't existing. Yeah. And so I just worked in computer graphics for a really long time, and VR was kind of in
biding your time.
Yeah, and so just waiting for the right moment, when this will be ready and come back. And then it started with getting the Oculus dev kits and these things, but they were not very good. And so for me, the Vive really did it. So we got a Vive developers kit very early on, and I had that in my office, and people were like, what is this? And I still have an unboxing video of me unboxing this thing. And so I took it out, and at that point there was zero content, so there was nothing. So the only thing you could do is put on the headset, and you would be in this gray room, and you could spawn balloons. And so that was all. And I was completely amazed by how good the tracking was and how good the headset was. And so that really did it for me, where I was like, wow, this is really happening now. This is great. And this is going to be way bigger than it was in the 90s. And I lived through the whole .com bubble and had a lot of friends that had startups and these sort of things. And I said, we have to position a product now, because this is the opportunity, that it's a once in a lifetime thing. And so that's basically how it started from, then we just went for it and built it. So should I continue? Or?
So I was just chatting. Some people were saying they were having trouble logging in. Yeah. I was just chatting. Okay. So what was the moment like? So talk about the birth of Hologate, like the very early days, because we had a conversation, and I hope you're willing to share this, and I think you will be, about like making the decision to go to IAPA, go to EAS. I've had a lot of conversation with companies that are in VR now that are a little bit later getting out to the market. And as you know, it's gotten crowded, and a couple of companies like yours have established a beachhead. And once that happens, no pun intended, And once that happens, it's hard to break in, and these guys are really struggling. And I've told them, I had my own struggles at LaserStorm. Like I took it to a Chapter 11 bankruptcy before it took it public. And so you want to talk about, troughs and peaks. Talk a little bit about the struggles that you went through. People need to hear that right now for some inspiration.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've talked to a few people, and so one of them, I think, is Jason Crawford, who always told me it was really great to hear that story from Modal VR, because they were also going through difficult times and it's not so easy. And so I totally understand that. And so when we started, so I took all my private money, and I took all the money that my company had, and we just put it towards this. And so it was for me like all in, and it was really hard. So at the start, we kind of didn't really know how to address the market and how to do this. So I thought I kind of, know how all of this should work. But of course it was a lot of assumptions, because I mean, it's basically making up a working model. And that is including everything from business, how to sell it, how to price it, and so forth. And so there was a lot of discussions about how to do this. And so I mean, we went, the first show we took it to was at Gamescom in Cologne. And so my partner, Robert, he's got a huge background in gaming and esports and so forth. And so we've been to Gamescom for, I don't know, like 20 years or something, like every year. And so he already knew all the sponsors and who to work with and so forth. And so we went there and we got a sponsorship, and we didn't have to pay anything for it. And it was really interesting was we actually met Neurogaming for the first time, and they were there, and we were like, oh my God, this is very similar. This is insane. And I hadn't heard of them before, and they hadn't heard of us. And so it was really, really funny at the time.
That's funny, because my first IAP, I showed up, I met Quasar Space Games, they were called at the time, and it was the same reaction. I totally know that reaction. You're like, who are these guys?
Yeah, it was the same thing. We're like, holy, it's the same thing. It's very similar. Like, it's a very similar idea. And they were, at the time, they were bigger, because they already had, I think, like 10 locations or something, and we had like 2. And so that was the first one. But Gamescom is not a show where you sell. So this is for a lot of consumers, and you get attention. We had a lot of press and interviews and TV and like all that stuff, but you don't sell there. And then so it was good, but it's in general, like if you look at the market, like the biggest market is the US. It's because it's a uniform market. And it's basically, I mean, if you look at any franchise, it's mostly from the US, because you have a uniform market that allows you to scale. So like Burger King or McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever. And it's pretty easy to scale in the US because there's just so much of the same. And so this is not like that in Europe or anywhere else in the world. It's maybe in China, but China is a different planet. Like, and especially for VR, it's a completely different planet. You can it's different. And so it works completely different. And so then after that, we we took it to EAS, and that's where we met more partners really. And at that time, we were really struggling. So I was almost bankrupt at that stage. So I couldn't afford anything. And then it was like, this is it. And then like IAPA in Orlando would have been our last show. It was the only thing. It was 1 hour, one shot at this. And after that, I would have closed down.
Did you listen to the Eminem song? What was that Eminem song for 8 Mile? Did you listen to that as you were setting up over again?
I don't know. Yeah, it was like that. It was really like that, because like it was a lot of money we put into this to make this happen, and a lot of people. And if I would, that was the thing. Is there a market? Will people buy this? Will people like understand what we're trying to build also for the future and so forth?
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the money. So you and I have both been active on social media defending not only Hologate, but other companies that are bringing these turnkey products to market, right? And a lot of the hobbyist arcade guys, right? When I segment the market, you've got the VR arcades, which are basically Vive stations in some configuration, anywhere from 4 to 40. And a lot of the people that got into that business, especially on the smaller side, are what I call hobbyists, guys that fell in love with VR, like you did, and said, I'm going to build this thing. And it's amazing. And there's been a lot of pushback about the price of Hologate, primarily because you're the leader. They're the ones that, but the other companies. And I want you to talk about that. Talk about the level of investment that you had to put in, not only into the product, but the product development, because you're doing the vertical stack, man. It's all of it, right? And it's expensive. I know it is because I've done it. Talk about that. Address that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm currently now employing about 40 people that work on this, right? So, I mean, you can estimate how much that is in our monthly expenditure, right? Plus office and all of, like all of the hardware and everything you want to test and try and all of that. So there is a lot of money, and we put in really a lot of money. It was, all of my private money and my old company's money that we took to build this. So it was a lot of money. And so now we have Hologate here in an arcade in Munich, which is like a normal VR arcade that has Steam stations, and we put it in there as our first location because we wanted to have it open to the public so that we could learn from this. Is it stable? What do people say? What do they want? How's it working? And so we get direct feedback. And so this is the only location that we're kind of really involved with and partly self-operating. So, and the other ones are sold. And now, as you already said, I think that the market is in 3 tranches. So it's 3 tiers, and it's you have the VR arcades. And it's a lot of people that try and make money with this because they saw this and they also love the technology, and they saw, okay, there's a lot of people out there that actually don't know what VR is, and I'm having so much fun with that. And I mean, I have put on headsets on literally thousands of people, like myself, on trade shows, and like even before we had Hologate, because we built an experience for Audi and I went out there. And what I really liked was this direct feedback that you get. And I worked in graphics for so long, and all of a sudden you see, wow, people are really enjoying what you do, and they give you great feedback. It's like playing a live concert or something, right? And I just love it, this direct feedback, and seeing that people are having fun and enjoy it as much as you do. And maybe before that, they didn't even know, or they had bad experiences. So that's VR arcades, and I think that's kind of where this comes from. And then the next tier is what we're building. It's Turnkey Solution, and this is geared for a lot of entertainment centers and professional businesses that usually have a much bigger cash flow compared to VR arcades. So it's family entertainment centers, it's trampoline parks, go-karting, it's bowling, it's cinemas. So it's all these kind of places, and they want the full package. So they want everything. So they want you to set it up. They want you to give you the support. They want a continuous flow of new experiences and games, and that's secured so that they know, okay, next year this company is still around because I just bought this thing and invested into this. And so all of that is really that's kind of our market. And then I think the third market is destinations, and so all of that gets mixed up, I think, all 3. And so destinations is the Void, it's Nomadic, it's Dreamscape, and it's zero latency, and it's all the others that basically try and build this.
I've started calling those drive-through entertainment concepts, because they're really short, and I don't know if they're going to work. But
I think it's really what it is. It's a destination. So they want people to come to you, and they are trying to build what I think in the amusement and attraction world you would call an anchor attraction. So basically a big attraction that people will come to, especially for this. And an anchor attraction is, I want to go laser tag, I want to do karting, like this sort of stuff.
Bowling, skating.
Yeah, whatever. So it's exactly. So you know what you're in for, and you're going there with your friends, and you want to do that. And I think that still at the moment it's difficult to market VR as an anchor attraction, because so many people don't know what to expect, or they think they get sick or something. So the huge majority of people out there still is not used to all of that, and it's their first experiences, especially in the free roam. And so that's where basically the difference is. And this is, I think it's really 3 different markets, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about, I was just in VR Park, and before we went, Leif and I were talking about VR Park, 2-Bit Circus, and again, 2-Bit Circus is still early. Like I have massive faith in those guys, and I know those guys are going to nail it. I don't actually know how well they're doing. I only have my own observational research that I can use. But But I think that the park, these bigger parks, VR centers, whatever, we need to coin a term maybe for them, from VR Park, which is doing, like, it's really not doing well. And it's interesting. I'll just give everybody an update because I had a lot of messages asking about it. That they've gone from, it was a Sega center, it was a Sega FEC on multiple levels, with some hard rides and all kinds of games. And they were doing about 20 million a year in revenue at the Dubai Mall. And now what I hear is they gutted it. They put all VR in. It was a joint venture between Starbreeze and Emaar, which is the big government-sponsored real estate firm in Dubai, and they took it. They took that 20 million. And a friend of mine used to say, "What's the best way to make $1 million? Start with $10 million." And they took it from 20 million down to 6 million. And now what they're doing is, they're trying to fiddle with the product mix, and they're pulling stuff out, they're putting stuff in, but they've got cranes in there and arcade games and redemption games, and now they're going back to more making it a mixed use VR FEC, but I think they're lost. They're just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what works. Now we talked about 2-Bit Circus, and I know you've been really successful there. Talk a little bit about your experience with Hologate at 2-Bit, and then talk a little bit about how you see 2-Bit, because you travel as almost as much as I do and see a lot of shit. How do you view that model?
So I've played a lot of stuff, and so I've played all the major VR things, and I've been to all the centers around the world, and I've pretty much seen most of it, I would say. So, and tried it, and so I think that I was also in the VR Park Dubai, and so that was pretty much 1 year ago, and they just opened a few months before, I think, and I saw huge issues, that I wasn't sure if this is really going to work. And so it's kind of what it is. So I think we can talk about that, why it is like this. And I think that if you look at 2-Bit, I think at the moment, what they're doing is very different, because it's really, and we talked about that earlier a little bit, it's about human-centered design, what you always push as well. It's about that you think about what do people actually want, and is it nice in there, and do you want to hang around there and have a drink and stay the whole night, right? And so it's about very much core values that a successful entertainment center would hopefully do as well, right? So, and like, if you look at the marketing in 2-Bit, a lot of it is not about VR. It's about, hey, bring your friends here. You can have fun. Take your family and enjoy whatever, a night out. Or they're doing these Valentine's Days things where you have whatever, you get dinner and a game show, and we also have this cool VR stuff if you want to try that, right? And so it's a lot of VR in there. And so they got pretty much everything that's available, including they're also building their own VR, because the whole family, it's owned by Brent Bushnell, who is the son of Nolan Bushnell, which is the original founder of Atari.
There's a little bit of arcade in their DNA, huh?
Yeah, so and it's Wyatt Bushnell who builds machines there, and he built the escape room and so forth. And so it's a family kind of tradition almost.
Yeah.
Right. And Nolan also invented Chuck E. Cheese back in the days. And I guess back in the days, this was it was insanely. They built I think more than 200 locations in the first year. It just blew up insane, right? Of course, I think that they really nailed it in terms of how a modern FEC can look like, where people would want to spend the whole night. And I had a great time there, and there's a lot of fun stuff, and I think it's really smart.
I think it's interesting they don't market VR at all, really. Like, you look at it, and if you in a lot of the online videos and stuff, there's VR stuff there, but they don't mention VR in the name and the positioning, anything like that. And so talk about how's your platform. So there's a lot of VR there, right? So you've got a Hologate, they've got 4 or 5 big Vive booths. They've got Birdly. They've got the tank, a couple of driving tank simulators. They've got the Raft from Starbreeze, which is a 4-player game. They've got Ubisoft.
Is in there.
How did I miss that?
They have a 2-player. They're doing the ping game mostly.
Oh no, that's modal. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Of course. I'm so sorry. Of course, modal is in. I'm sorry.
Right. And then they have the Triotech Ubisoft Minotaur Maze with rabbits and what's the Assassin's Creed. So there's a lot of VR in there. I went there and I went there with my daughter for her 21st birthday, and we got there fairly early, like 5:30 or 6. So by then there was already a line to play, and by 7 o'clock it was a 2.5 hour wait to get a Hologate ticket.
That's sort of
the longest wait of anything there by far. So talk about, how do you attribute the success of talk about the success as much as you can within 2-bit. If you can quantify any of the numbers, I know people want to hear, but I also know sometimes there's confidentiality issues. And then secondly, why has it been so successful there? Like, what is it amongst all this VR competition? Why have you guys crushed it?
So, I mean, I can only guess in the room as well, right? So, I mean, I can say why I think it is like this and what our core values are and our vision and all of that, and maybe that's where it plays out. So, 2-bit has about, on a Saturday night, they're the busiest, and that is like in any other entertainment center, it's the same thing. And so they have up to a 2.5 hour wait. They actually have like a little LED screen that shows you how long you have to wait for the main attractions that they have. And so you can sign up and you don't have to queue in line, but it's actually a queuing system, and they would tell you when you can come back. So now I know these guys pretty well, and so they're doing exceptionally good. So what we're seeing is, on average, like if you take all the locations, and so we have a lot of data, right? So we're looking at all the analytics, and all the systems are connected. So we can look at all the data, and we can see how things are performing, right? And an average system is doing about 1,500 players per month. So that's the average across the board. And then you have places that outperform this. And so we have like about maybe 20 to 25%, I would say, that are in the top tier, and they do above 2,000 players. And so the maximum per month player, single players. So basically tickets sold. And then the top peak we've ever seen is 5,000 players per month. So this is the total end of the scale.
And is that in 1 month, or was that actually consistent over?
It's in 1 month, so they're doing a lot. So it's one place, and they did 5,000, and that's the top peak. But then what we're seeing is kind of the top range is like 2,000 to 3,000 players per month, and so this is places like Andretti's or 2-bit, like the kind of that have a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
And they get 2,000 to 3,000 players a month, sometimes more, sometimes a little less, whatever they do, 2,500, 3,500, 2,200. So it's kind of like this. And so it does well. Now we can go to why is that? I went closer to the microphone. I read your comment. I'm sorry. So someone said this is shit audio. So I hope it's better. Why is that? So when I designed this, I said I want this to be open, first of all. So I want this to be maximum open so people can watch and understand what this is, and they can see people have fun. So it's also part of the reason why we didn't put the columns in the corners, we put them in the middle. So you get maximum exposure, basically, so you can see people play from the best angles, right? Yeah. So that's just how the system is. And then I think it's basically, I mean, what's been really successful is our shooters, right? And so a simple game as a shooter, of course, makes sense. And if you have a peripheral like a gun, people from the outside understand, oh, this is a shooter. I've played it in an arcade, and I can play that in VR. And it's just simple stuff. So this is really basic. Now, I think that so this is more talking about the future. So we will do a lot of other content that is not shooters and totally different experiences. But this is where we started because it's of course the most popular kind of content. And then, I mean, we're just basically trying to design that it is fun for the players, but at the same time, it's super easy to use for the operator. And one thing that's also really important is that this is reliable. So there is like zero tolerance in like stuff crashing and not working, and they all just flame you and hate you. And it's so this is really, it's really like we have to make sure all of that is stable. And I mean, of course, like, you know, every now and then we have a bug, and then we have to fix this and find that and all of that, like in any other game. But we are now, I think, at a very stable point where all of our games are very stable. And also the whole way you operate it, and so it's easy to get people in. And also, if you compare this to like a free roam attraction or backpack systems that are at 2-bit as well, it's about throughput. So it's about how many people do I get through in you know, the least amount of time, with still them having a great experience, so that they're happy and they come out and go, wow, this was cool, I really loved that, and you know, they had a good time. And the throughput is so I mean, we could have made this wireless. We you know, we played with a lot of things, and it's about stability and you know, getting the throughput. And so it's a tethered system, and it makes perfect sense for that space. And space, again, I mean, it's also, this is a normal kind of thing in the amusement industry, which is revenue per square foot. So how much money can you make on that space, and how many people do you get through? And so this is all things that I think we got right. And that is also why we had so much success, you know, selling this system, because it just matched this basic equation. And, you know, with the promise of more content, basically it makes a lot of sense for basically to buy into this.
Yeah, I think, look, and the content thing's really interesting. So I just came from the EFM, the European Film Mart, and there's a conference there called VR Now, which is kind of really a lot of content creators and a lot of conversations about it. And one of the things that I think, you know, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, people are tired of zombie shooters, and people are tired of shooting games, and people are tired of, there's no data at all suggesting any of that is true, right? The horror genre had the #1 earnings this year of that genre in history in Hollywood. And the video game industry is dominated by first-person shooters, which is obviously what people want to play. And so, you know, I think that there's just this, you know, it's easy to lash out at what is kind of low-lying fruit in VR, because they say the easiest thing to do is scare somebody. And obviously, but that's what people want. People want to fucking shoot their friends. They want to shoot zombies. They want to be scared. And so talk to me about the popularity of the various games that you've published. So let's get into content. All right. Let's shift the conversation into content. So you've got a bunch of games. Talk to me about the arc of what games do you have now. Then we'll get into the future games. I'll play the trailer. And the arc and popularity of those games. What have you seen?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, when we published, we only really had 2 games. And so our player versus enemy game, where you basically defend the platform, was more popular than a player versus player game. And I can't say that this will always be the case. So what will be really interesting, I think, is by the end of this year, or probably at some point next year, we will have a really good understanding of how all of that shifts and moves. So I look at a lot of data and what's happening and what people are playing, and you know, how this shifts over time. But still, like, we only have you know, now I think 5 or 6 titles live. And so I think it's going to be really interesting when there's a bunch more, and then to see what will work. And I have my predictions, and that's what we're really pokering on, of course. And but it's we will see. And so this is really it's and talking about a zombie game, right? I mean, why? So, you know, I looked into this when we do something, we start to think, why do we do this, and why not something else, right? And so if you do research exactly like what you said, like horror genre and all of that, and it really plays with people, and it's about your basic instinct to be alive, right? So you want to be alive. So that was good. And so you want to feel alive. And so if you basically, it's about hunt. right? So I think there's two basic instincts that you find in every game. It's hunting and collecting, right? And it's hunters and gatherers. So it's basically, it plays to what we are, our human nature, right? And so, you could also say maybe something plays more for male and something plays more for female in these two things, right? And so if you look at hunt is you're hunting an animal that's scary, right? And zombie shooting is exactly that. It's hunting a scary animal. And you want to have that experience. So it's human nature. And so like go away from guns and all of that. It's modern hunt. It's basically a replacement for hunt. That's all. And so if you look at collecting, like a lot of games go for collecting, like whatever, Candy Crush, I collect levels, or like these sort of things, or like these sort of things, right? And I think a good, I think that's basic core game design.
I think it's really interesting. I think it's a really interesting point, because I was thinking about Groove Guardians and where that fits. But I also think that if you think about the history of mankind, dance has been a part of tribal culture since the beginning of civilization, or before civilization. And so, interesting that like we're tapping into these really base needs of people to express themselves in ways that are entertaining.
Correct.
Interesting.
Absolutely. And it's also sports, it's activity, right? It's doing something together. It's social gathering. I mean, this whole thing is about social, And when we started, people asked, hey, are you going to have normal Steam content on there? And I always said, no, if I have the chance, no way. We're not going to put, not just because it's your average content, but it's also about, I don't want single player content on it. This is social, like this is doing something together. There is no point in doing it by yourself. This is not what we want. If you want to do it by yourself, you play at home. Why do that out of home entertainment if you just play by yourself? I don't see the sense.
Yeah. So talk about, all right, so what content, so I know you see the data, what's the most popular content? What's the distribution curve look like? So you've got, so the first game was the PvP game, right? The shooting at each other. Yeah. And I know you've made some changes to that. Has that game, then you've got the Samurai, right? Yeah. Which is the wave shooter. Then you had Zombite after that.
No, we had Cold Clash. So we did Cold Clash because we really wanted a family game that's kind of suited well for kids and families, and it's not so.
Yep. Yeah. And then Zombite after that.
Zombite was the one after that. Yes.
And then Groove Guardians was the.
Groove Guardians is now out. Yeah. So that was published in around November, December. So. Yep. That's when it really came out. So the zombie game still is the most popular. It's the most played at the moment. And followed by our PvE Samurai game, because it's very well suited for everybody. Like kids can play this and families and so forth. So it's easy. It's not so violent. Yep. And Groove Guardians is picking up because it was only just published. And like it's funny when you go to like trade shows, and we're trying to. So here's the interesting thing: like when we go to trade shows, like same in IAPA, right? So we go there and then we show the zombie thing, and people just get really, oh, that's so cool, and they really like it, and they have a good time, and then more people want to do it, right? But really, we said, hey, let's push Groove Guardians. It's a game that probably could offer more replay, right, and could make people addicted. And it's actually a really fun game that gives you a lot of exercise and challenge and so forth, right? But we do that, and then some people like it, but then they always return to the zombie shooter at some point, right? So interesting. I think, and so now Groove Guardians and Zombite, I think, will be the two top lining games soon. So Zombite is the zombie game is the top at the moment anyway. And so Groove Guardians will get interesting because we are currently in the phase of planning an international worldwide tournament, right? And so we will basically run a tournament, a Groove Guardians tournament across all the systems and find the best teams. And so this is what we're planning at the moment. And we're basically still in negotiation with sponsors and so far. And once all of that is settled, then we're also going to talk more about what we're doing. And so the thing is, really, like, Robert, my partner that I started Hologate with, he has a huge esports and gaming background, as I mentioned before already. And so for us, the vision was also always, hey, VR esports is going to be a thing sooner or later. And so, I mean, of course, you can have people play at home and do this, but we can also have our own leagues now. So we're really big enough now to actually run competition. And so it's not so easy to do that because it needs a lot of other technology that we're bringing in, like team logins, and there will be an app eventually, and all of these sort of things. And so they're just all in development, and it's basically just parts that will come, and then it'll allow us to do all of that. And I think that will add another facet. And I think that in general content, like I think that if you look at, so this is an interesting thing, I see VR always as a melting pot of a lot of things, right? So it's gaming, it's storytelling and cinematic experiences and all kind of things. It can be anything. Now, the interesting thing is if you take something that has story, it automatically has less replay value. So the more you remove the story, I think that you get a lot of replay value because
it's really interesting. I want to jump into that because one of the things that came out at EFM when I was moderating the investor panel was that if you look at the two or three games that have been really successful in VR in the consumer market, so you've got Job Simulator, you've got Space Pirate Trainer, you've got Beat Saber. None of those games have any story, right? The story is implied. You make up the story. Like they talk about, what is it? Radio is and literature is theater of the mind, right? I mean, and so you drop people into a context and you let them create their own story. And so small teams don't have the luxury of doing story because story-driven games are really fucking hard and they're really expensive and you're in a narrative loop and you have to go down and you get halfway there and you're like, oh shit, it doesn't work, and you have to back out. And so it's really interesting that the most popular games on VR in the consumer market, none of them have any story written around them at all. And so you bring up a really important point. I think storytelling, is being overblown by people who have storytelling in their titles. Just saying.
Yeah. So, and it's basically, so I think that you can live somewhere in the mid ground between like maybe telling some story and adding elements like this. And so I think that also games that we will have on our platform will always be a little bit more, story driven, or it's more something that is for repeat play. And I think it's important to have, basically a lineup that will do different things, right?
Yeah.
So if you play like a more experience type title, maybe it is a one-off, right? But maybe it's super cool, right? And it's different, so it adds a different value. And so
we're going to be doing something with that. We're going to talk about new games. I want to pause you.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to the Groove Guardians thing because I found a video on YouTube that I'm going to play. And one of the things I loved about it at IAPA was, so one of the big challenges you get in VR, and everybody that here listens to me, we got a lot of new listeners thanks to your crushing it on social media all the time. But one of the things I talk about all the time is the challenge converting spectators to ticket buyers. And Groove Guardians, and oftentimes the challenge for that is I talk about mixed reality, creating context, putting people in the game, showing them how to do that. But Groove Guardians has this amazing, and I'm going to put up a video I found on YouTube just for people to see, has this amazing inherent expectation going on.
So if you play it well, you're actually in sync. They're kind of in sync already.
Like, well, I could see people standing around watching this in VR. It's like synchronized swimming for virtual reality, right? I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah, so I mean, the funny thing is they didn't know before, right? So no one practiced, so just the game does that. And so, like, I remember I still have a video somewhere when we did this for the first time in our office, right? And everybody was watching and just like applauding and cheering. And it was like, oh my God, this is working. Because we kind of said, okay, this could work and this could be super cool and this could look amazing. But do we actually have the space? And so this is, again, a space consideration. And so I think that when we estimated what kind of space we want for the players, we made a good guess when we started this. So to actually have enough space to be active and that you don't hit each other and so forth. And so, of course, like there's now other systems that are a little bit smaller, but I think really for us, the decision was we want people to be really active. And so I don't want to change the platform, and we couldn't change the platform anymore now because there's just too many out there. Like they're all the same. And so, I mean, I don't know if we said that. So we have almost 200 now built, and so they are from Alaska to New Zealand and a lot of countries in between, right? Yeah. So it's big in North America. So it's the biggest amount of installations are in North America. And then it's Europe, we're in the Middle East. We have a bunch in China. We have in Australia, New Zealand, Korea. We're putting one into Turkey.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so it's
crazy, right?
Yeah.
So Groove Guardian specifically, and then we'll move on off that to other content. What's the uptake curve been like? Like, how do you see when you release a new game? Because that's the first game you released when you had a massive footprint already. Then you released a new game on top of that. What's the adoption curve look like? Is there a way for you to describe that to people?
It's still too early. So because we only really published, like we published in November.
Yep.
So we're going through phases until we roll it all out across all the systems. And so really the rollout was in December. And so I think so we only really have the December and January data, and it's going up. But so it's a trend that's going up, but it's just 2 months. So, I mean, that's something that I can definitely answer in about 6 months or so. And the interesting thing will be if we introduce the tournament and all of that, I think it will push it a lot. So it will change the whole perception.
So the tournament you're going to do is Groove Guardians.
Yes. Interesting.
Cool. Why'd you select that game?
I think, so first of all, it's really skill-based. So we are getting, so one of the titles will get a new difficulty level called Epic, and it's really hard. And so it's basically, for me, I can't do it on that level. I have some developers here. They are insanely good at this, and they can do it. But it's really hard, and it's really active. So, I mean, it's a 5-minute game, and if you do it proper, you will be full on sweating and like really exhausted, right? And so for me, it's part of the future of esports. So I want this to be physical, and that's something which is interesting. Like going back to 2-Bit just for a second, like that we share some core values, which is like their games that they build, they have the same thing. So they have to be a little bit physical. They're all multiplayer. They're easy to understand. There is a funny quote that I always used when we started our games. I said, we want to build games that are easy to learn, hard to master. Now, the funny thing is I ran into Nolan Bushnell, and I Googled a little bit about Nolan Bushnell. There's actually a thing called the Bushnell's Law, if you go to Wikipedia, and it's exactly that sentence. And I was like, oh my God, this is funny. This has a name, right? So, which is cool. And so what was that?
How did I not know about that?
Yeah, it was just random. I Googled about Nolan Bushnell because I wanted to learn a little bit about the history, and so that popped up, and I was like, wow, this is funny, right? So, and I mean, that's basically what, the games were like, and that's why, he at his time with Atari, with Pong, and like all these things were so successful, because it's exactly that. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So by the way, Jan, I know Jan from Virtuix is on here watching, and he's got some really good statistics around competition driving repeat play. And I don't know if you're willing to put some of those stats in the chat, Jan, because I know you and I have a webinar coming up in the next month. But in the meantime, 104% increase in traffic, like the competitions that they're doing in Virtuix with relatively small prize pools. For the locations that are doing it are bringing a lot of repeat play. And so, if you can bring that to FECs and FEC operators and owners, any owner operator, like if you're not doing competitions, you're being lazy. Like that's just the bottom line. Like there's no reason you can't do it. There's no reason you can't get a freaking chalkboard on the wall and hand write down the high scores for the week or for the month. I know, Victor, there's been some esports stuff going on at Mindtrack too. If you want to throw some stuff in the chat for people, I think that'll be really interesting. So let's talk about, all right, so now I understand why you're saying you really won't understand the content patterns until towards the end of this year after you've released multiple games and you'll watch how they settle. So we've got I'm gonna play this video. So there's a new game that you announced at IAPA, and I hope that the sound comes. Somebody said they didn't have sound on the video, so I'm hoping that And so that was a big announcement at the IAPA show. And so talk to us about how did the deal come about, and talk about IP a little bit, because we've been just talking about storytelling and IP, and then give us the, like, when's this thing going to release? Who's doing the development? Give us some more context.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, I think IP is important, but it's only important as soon as you can afford it. And it's not you don't need IP. So when we were at VR Fest just now in Las Vegas, there was a talk by Nolan Bushnell again, and he was asked a similar question, and he said something: you only need IP when you're like at a good size, because then you can actually afford to do this.
Yeah.
Because IP comes with again, like more investment, and also that you now basically have to create something that works with the IP and all of that. So it's a big overhead to actually create something with IP. It's not so easy.
It's not just licensing. It's actually like the development is like, compare the development cost of something when you have to deal with a licensor and all the approvals and art assets and everything, compared to something you do yourself. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell, but I would say maybe it's a third more or so. I don't know. It's difficult, but it's also things like, if you just talk about the financials, they would want some upfront money or something. So it's different, right? So in terms of Angry Birds, it's really it's produced with Sony and Rovio together. And so we now have different game developers that are bringing additional content to the platform. So we have been approached by, I don't know, I would say something like 20 to 50 game developers or something, like that really wanted to bring something and say, hey, look at this, look at that. And I'm doing the content part. So I'm looking at the stuff and I'm selecting and seeing, okay, does it make sense or not? And so I'm talking to these people, or I'm looking at the content, and it has to basically make sense, because again, like working with third-party developers, then we have to teach them how they can bring stuff to our platform. And again, it's work and investment and time and money and so forth to actually make this happen. And so we will still always create our own content that will come to our platform. And so then we will have third-party games that will bring more content to the platform, so that our operators can choose to get these additional games if they want to. And so there will be basically, a little bit that, then you can choose to pay extra to basically give money to the developers. And this is something that we're developing at the moment. So all the technology behind that, so to make all of that work, and so make sense of that.
Yeah. So you gave me some clues, and I haven't really talked about it because I didn't feel it was you were ready to disclose it. But Can you talk a little bit about how you're going to deal with the additional revenue stream that you have to pay basically upstream to the licensor and the third-party developer? Is the model, are you set enough in the model where you're willing to talk about it, or is it still too early?
I can give you basics. So it will release in the next few months. So we're pretty close. So we're still testing a few things. We're dealing with, kind of like a cryptocurrency, if you want, now in the background. And
so you're not an ICO, are you? No, just kidding.
No, I actually thought about that, to be honest. And I've talked about people about an ICO and so forth. So I have actually, and I was like, no, it's actually a problem with the German law as well. So This is like weird. But anyway, no, it is kind of like a cryptocurrency in the background, and so we're building that. Then basically there will be an online shop in the back end that owners can access, and they can get the content. And we thought the most fairest model is to not have them buy the title outright, but everybody wants to try it. So it's going to be a pay-per-game model. And we've told all our operators and owners about that we're planning to do this. And still, what we always have to say is this is not going to change any of the developments that we're doing ourselves.
Right.
So we will still make our games that will be successful, like we've shown, and we will build our own stuff. It's just to make it more versatile, so that people can opt in to have something else if they want. Like there are certain places that want more content, or different content, because they have there's different venues that have different age groups, and so maybe they can add and offer something extra if they want. So it's just an additional basically offer.
But at some point, the economics of the model, like it's a network model in a way, right? You have to have a certain footprint and a certain amount of content to be able to generate enough revenue to split the revenue amongst all the different pillars of content, so everybody makes money. And there's a delicate balance there. Do you have a like a formula yet? Is it too early? But what are you thinking about? Like, how much content can the platform support as it grows? Like, you've got 200 you've sold now, I know, or 200 you've installed now or close to it. Yeah. And I've heard 300, the number that you've sold. At some point, that's going to go to 500, I assume. How much content is a good amount or too much, or is it too early to tell?
It's too early to tell. So we're just basically, there is concepts that how we're building, how I try to build stuff. So, and it's basically, I think, something that maybe you had in your papers as well. So it starts with human-centered design to see what people do actually want, right? And then it goes through, I always like a lean method, right? Which is basically like try and test, what makes, what works, and iterate over it. And we have an agile process that is basically then reiterating over the games and making them better. Yeah. So that's the 3 loops, right? And so if you just think about this concept, it's basically we're making it up as we go. Yeah. So it's something like we will see how the numbers go. So we're not throwing like 20 games or 30 games or 50 games on there, because that doesn't make sense, because then you destroy the revenue of the developers. So we will just bring a few, see how they go, be smart about what's coming, and then bring more. If we want more, then we will care about more. But at the moment, I think we're really settled. So we have.
So you've got Angry Birds coming out. When's it coming out? When's it going to launch? Do you know yet?
Angry Birds is going to come in early July.
Okay, so summer.
And so August is in August the film is going to release. So it's going to be prior to the film, because it's a tie-in with the film. Yep. So there is an Angry Birds VR game that was just released for consumer headsets, but it's what we're building is completely different. It's got nothing to do with it.
Do you think that's going to create confusion, or my guess is nobody knows about Angry Birds VR because nobody's doing
exactly. No one knows anyway, but it's also not going to create confusion, because it's like what we're building is very, very different to this game. It's completely different. And again, it's multiplayer, and
it's a true
totally made
game.
Sorry?
It's a true multiplayer game. It's not.
Of course, it's built exactly for multiplayer. It's full on Hologate, optimized everything. It's not the game that is out there at all. It's something completely different.
To Hologate, or will they be releasing that? Will they be? Is that exclusive to Hologate, or will they be releasing that on other platforms at some point in the future, possibly?
No, it's exclusive to Hologate. So we'll try and basically get all the content that is third-party exclusive, and it doesn't always work. But we're trying to make most of the content that is third-party exclusive.
Yeah, cool. And then what about and then coming beyond that, you've got Das Boot, which you've talked about. Give us a quick brief on what that is, and because that's another very different kind of an experiment for you guys, right?
Yeah, it is totally different. So it's a 4-player experience where 4 people, and it's asymmetric. That means everybody plays a different role, and it's really totally completely different to what we've done before. And so we have it running here, and it's very far advanced. But we have to launch it with a shop, and so the shop will launch in a bit, and so it's almost done pretty much. And here it's interesting because like we have friends come in and they play, or people that have never seen this, and clients and so forth, and it's like testing, right, as well. And so we throw parties here as well. And so, people like we have friends now, they throw their whatever birthday parties and stuff here. And so it's for us, it's always great because it's a game test, right? So we can test things on people, right? So we like to have people come here and try it. And so with Das Boot, it's interesting because I don't think it's really well suited for a first play. Like if you've never done anything in VR, this is not it. So it's a very different experience. It's more built probably for adults and so forth. So it's just adding something like a facet to, I think, what VR can be and how you can socially interact and do something and experience something together.
Yeah.
And you're basically in a submarine, right? And so you have to survive depth charges that get dropped and like all these sort of things.
Yeah. And so it's kind of a virtual escape room. Is that how you're going to describe it? How are you going to describe it to people? Because marketing in VR is always a challenge.
I think, we're going to say it's an escape room. I would say it's an escape room / simulator, really. So it's not your average escape room. It's not. But it's, of course, it's called Das Boot VR Escape. So that's basically to make people understand what this is.
And for those of you that aren't familiar with the IP, going way back, 1981, it was a movie directed by Wolfgang Petersen. They got a 98% Rotten Tomatoes review. It's a freaking amazing movie. And there's a reboot happening now on Netflix. And I'm assuming that's going to be dubbed or subtitled on a global basis.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. So it's a series. They're actually now shooting the second season already because the first season was really popular here, and it's going to go international. And then the IP will also basically be more well known as well.
And so for those of you that haven't caught this on my mentoring group, which I'll put up for you, if you're not in the mentoring group, I'm going to go ahead and put up a link to that, and I would like you to join if you're interested in conversations like this. And I was just in Belgium and went to a place called the Park Playground, and they've done a deal. They've just done content, free roam content, with a TV show called The Das, which is The Day. It's The Day, and it's about a bank robbery heist going on, and you actually take the role in the production company that did the movie, or this Netflix series did the that's not on Netflix, it's on their local cable channel, but it's starting to be on streaming platforms. And you take a role of this tactical team, and it's the same actors, the voice actors, the video actors. It's really, really high end. So it's really interesting. Not enough, everybody thinks about movies for IP. Not enough people are like, we're in the platinum age of television, right? It's not even the golden age. And so there's so much great IP out there right now that people are not looking at potentially.
Or for VR. So the third title that we will launch the store with is World of Tanks, right? And so that's another one. And so that's with Wargaming, and even Wargaming is a huge publisher and game developer.
Yep.
And so that's also exciting, and it's another facet, really. And so there's a few more lined up that we haven't announced yet.
Interesting. And so, by the way, the Wargaming, now that's World of Tanks is the same thing that Neurogaming has on Play VR. Is it the same game, or are you guys doing something different to it?
It's similar. So basically, we have a developer that is developing and porting it to Hologate, and I gave them input about what I think could be improved. And so it will basically be based on this game, but then extended for Hologate and usability and so forth. So it's not 100% identical.
Gotcha.
But that's where that's the origins.
Cool. Awesome. So like, I feel like we could go on for hours, my friend, but anything else last minute that you want to, that I didn't ask or you didn't get to talk about that you want to kind of close with?
Maybe that, I'm just insanely happy that, all of this is working, and I'm just, it was really hard to get here. And so I'm just really happy about this. And again, like, there's people that come to me and say, oh, this is so inspiring, that's so cool, and you guys are like crushing it and so forth. And for me, it's like, I'm happy to do this and just be in a spot basically to build something. And I'm just honestly really humbled by the size this has gotten to, and I hope that it will continue growing, because really we need a huge platform so that more content can come and we can spend more on content. And cinema and films are only so good today because you can spend 100 million or more on one film, but you can only do that because it's up to the scale of distribution. So we wanted to build distribution. And so I'm just really happy that we basically took a good step in that direction. And yeah, we just really hope that we continue what we're doing, because we really love what we're doing. And I always felt like what I said earlier when I started this in the 90s, this journey, that I'm kind of going full circle here and really doing what I wanted to do. And so I'm just happy. So, and also thank you, Bob, because you've been part of this journey. And just thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I'll see you at Amusement Expo, I assume. Hopefully you'll be there.
I'm going to be in Dubai, so I have to go to Dubai, and it's at the same time, so I won't be able to make it.
Arne will be there. So by the way, I put up Amusement Expo on that side. Click the link, the download. We're putting together, there should be an announcement going out in the next day or so with initial speakers. It's going to be amazing. If you're on here and you want to potentially get on a panel or talk, you have something interesting to say, drop me an email at vrbob@bobcooney.com. I really thank everybody for the support. We had an amazing turnout for this. Leif, I have to give you the thank for that, because you're a bit of a celebrity. I love your success. I love seeing entrepreneurs be successful. That's part of what gets me up at 4:30 in the morning to do this. So I will, so we're going to go. I have a 6 o'clock call, which I'm late for. So I hope to talk to you guys all next week. I don't know who's here, who's coming, but I'm sure it'll be amazing. So Bob Cooney, Leif Petersen, Hologate, Deep Dives. We'll see you guys online. Thanks.
Thank you.